Hello, welcome to this general election candidate forum, live streamed to YouTube and co-sponsored by the Daily Record newspaper and the League of Women Voters. My name is Charlie Sorensen, and I am the Voter Services Chair of the League of Women Voters, Kittitas County. Founded in 1920, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization with 800 affiliates across the country. It encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses or opposes candidates or political parties at any level. We don't care how you vote, only that you vote. League membership is open to all genders, ages 16 and over, and we invite you all to join us. Our moderator for this candidate virtual forum event is Catherine Murphy. Catherine has been a member of the League since 2017, where she has filled a variety of roles at the state and local level. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Charlie. I am very pleased to moderate our candidate forums for the 2020 general election. These events offer voters the opportunity to hear candidates directly respond to community questions. The League of Women Voters records and retains a full unedited copy of all candidate forums. If any portion of a League forum is redistributed out of context to make a candidate to appear to say something they did not say, or are edited to make a candidate look bad or in any way they did not actually look at the original forum, then the League of Women Voters will alert the media, provide the unedited video for comparison, and file appropriate complaints with any applicable governing authority. As we begin, I want to note that our ballots should arrive by October 16th. Please call the auditor's office if you don't receive yours by then. You still have time to register or change your address. You can do so online until October 26th and in person at the auditor's office through 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 3rd. Your ballot must be postmarked on or before November 3rd. There are 9 ballot drop boxes throughout Kittitas County. In addition to this live stream event, the recording will be available on the Kittitas County League YouTube channel. We thank the following media partners for also sharing these forums: Ellensburg Daily Record newspaper, Ellensburg Community Television, Spectrum Channel 191, and Inland Networks. We have discussed the ground rules for the forum with the candidates prior to today's event. My job is to keep us on time and on task, which means that if a candidate goes past their time, I will move us along. The candidates have the opportunity to make a 60-second opening statement. Then we will ask 5 prepared questions that we sourced from the community. We provided these questions to the candidates 2 hours ago, and they will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. Then we will move to 3 live stream audience questions. The candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each of these questions. The forum will conclude with a 60-second closing statement by each candidate. If you are viewing this live, you can submit a question by texting 509-654-9030. The questions must be for both candidates. League members will review the questions. We may combine or edit them for clarity, nonpartisanship, and time limitations. The Kittitas County Sheriff is the Chief Executive Law Enforcement Officer and Conservator of the Peace in the county. This is a 4-year term. I would like to welcome Clay Myers and Bart Olson to this forum. Thank you both for taking the time to be with us, and thank you for your willingness to serve our community as Kittitas County Sheriff. As we discussed earlier, I will alternate who answers the questions first, and we will begin with Mr. Myers. You have 60 seconds for your opening statement. Clay, Mr. Myers, you're on mute.
Very good. Thank you very much, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for always being so supportive and ensuring that good information gets out to the public. Very beneficial. My name is Clay Myers. I'm the current sheriff. I have been with the sheriff's office for 35 years. I came to Kittitas County after completing my tour of duty in the United States Army. I met and married my wife. We've raised 3 daughters, and Kittitas County is our home. I've had the honor of serving in every division, every aspect of the sheriff's office. I've been able to participate in community events, and I just feel so confident and comfortable living here in Ellensburg because public safety is something we're able to achieve. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds to make your opening statement.
Okay, thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Daily Record for hosting this forum. My name is Bart Olson. I'm a 25-year career with the Washington State Patrol. I just recently retired this year. I obtained my start in law enforcement while going to Central Washington University with the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office as a reserve officer. I was a reserve officer for a year and a half with the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office. I obtained my law and justice degree in law from Central, 4-year degree, and then I also got a psychology minor. I worked in the corrections facility for a year and a half, and then when I was hired by Washington State Patrol, I spent the majority of my time working for the Washington State Patrol within Kittitas County. I look forward to serving as a sheriff in this county because I love this community and want to continue doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. So the first question is, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer for the county. What have you done during your career to better prepare yourself for this important position? Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, I chose the Washington State Patrol for my career path because it allowed me the 25-year option of being able to retire and then continue working for another agency like our 2 previous sheriffs have done. The Washington State Patrol is a very professional agency. I pride myself on doing that as well, and being professional, honest, and transparent. And that's why I chose the Washington State Patrol. I want to go back to the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office because I think it's an agency that can improve and do a better job at being professional, transparent. During my career, I became a sergeant. I had supervisory authority over a detachment of troopers and administrative staff here in Ellensburg. I was on the Kittitas County Law and Justice Council, Kittitas County Grants Committee, and was an executive member of the Kittitas County Law and Justice Board. I look forward to helping out.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Myers, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Well, in preparing for this, aside from working in all of the divisions and getting experience in all of the divisions, I attended and completed all of the courses necessary to achieve my career level certification in supervision. I also completed it for middle management and for executive level career certification. I've also attended and graduated from Law Enforcement Command College. I participated in at the state level with a number of committees, specifically the Legislative Committee, and worked with through WASPIC at the state level on boating safety. In fact, I was recently just appointed as the Sheriff's State Representative to the Boating Safety Committee. I think the biggest factor probably is just obtaining those certifications so that we have the broad scope of experience.
Thank you. Question 2. What is the sheriff's role in enforcing public health mandates? Mr. Myers, you start and you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. Public health mandates are issued by the public health officer, either at the county or the state level. Those mandates, when presented to the court, can become orders. The difference between the two is that a mandate coming from the public health officer is where we work with the community. We have latitude and discretion in how we're going to enforce those, such as with the masks right now, we're using a strong education incentive. We have the ability to ramp that up a notch if we have to. If a public health officer goes to the court and obtains a public health order, that's a court-ordered mandate. What that means is we only have the discretion the court gives us. If it says all people will do this, we have a legal obligation to go out and ensure all people do that.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds.
Okay. Well, I think we must remain committed to preventing crime and disorder, even during a public health mandate. We must rely on the public to cooperate and be engaged for these mandates. And then I think there's, you know, that willing cooperation is something that's very important. Law enforcement has to have discretion, and I think the discretion involves educating the people during a public health mandate. And we should lead by example. That's something that I would plan on doing as sheriff, lead by example. Even in a mandate, want to make sure my officers are going to be safe, their families are safe, citizens are safe. So education is probably, I agree, it's the most vital thing we can do during a health mandate. With that being said, there are certain times when we may have to take something in consideration, and citation should be the last thing used in those matters.
Thank you. Question 3, the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office is not accredited by the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. If elected, will you pursue accreditation? Why or why not? Mr. Olson, you start and you have 60 seconds.
Okay. Well, the purpose of law enforcement accreditation is to basically, through the law enforcement industry, is to set up standards that we need to operate under. And I think it's very important that, I mean, basically accreditation is the gold standard that we all should try and help achieve. And that would be a goal of mine, is to have the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office be accredited. And accreditation brings more, it brings about more public confidence, increased credibility, and it's just something that I think every agency should strive for. Whether or not you end up getting accredited or not is something that it will still make an agency better. But it definitely would be a goal of mine, and I think it should be a goal of every agency. I'm glad I worked for the Washington State Patrol, where it's an accredited agency where we strive to be the best we can, like every agency should.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. The Sheriff's Office was literally one of the first Sheriff's offices in Washington State to become CALEA accredited. That's at the national standard. And I absolutely believe that we need to be accredited. We've already initiated that process. I served on the Accreditation Commission for Washington State and also on the Accreditation Committee. I'm also a certified accreditation inspector. I've conducted prelims. I've conducted a number of these with neighboring jurisdictions. I think that it does benefit us. It makes sure that we're doing what we say we're going to do. It ensures that we have the proper policies in place, and it ensures that we're adhering to those. And one of the key things about accreditation is that you have to prove you're doing things the right way. You have to maintain proofs for transparency and accountability that you're actually adhering to your policies in the right manner and you have the right ones.
Thank you. Good. Question 4. In light of the recent court decision upholding the constitutionality of Initiative 1639, how will you enforce the law as passed by the voters? We start this time with you, Mr. Myers, and you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you very much. Pretty complex issue. There's a number of things that went into that bill, reclassifying assault rifles, transferring some of the responsibilities for background checks, creating criminal liability for literally the actions of somebody else if you don't have your weapons stored in a manner that was prescribed. The recent court case was fairly specific to, was this law passed and is it constitutional? In other words, can it be enforced? That's the first phase. What occurs next generally is what's called case law. And so if somebody violates those laws, they get enforced, it goes to court, then it's determined up whether that specific individual committed that specific crime that creates case law. We have an obligation to investigate Every alleged crime, this now falls into that. So we will investigate, but we look at things on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Okay. Well, discretion in law enforcement is very important. As sheriff and law enforcement, we signed an oath to the Constitution of the United States. I am a proponent of the Second Amendment, and this recent ruling on 1639 does show that it was passed by the voters of our state, and it's one of those things where law enforcement, it is a sticky situation where law enforcement still needs to respond and investigate all reported crimes, write reports, and or if necessary, they can refer charges or charge somebody even with this law. I believe this will still be battled through the courts in the future. And so I remain committed to having our officers investigate and document, and then if necessary, we have to send things to the prosecutor who would get ultimate charging decisions regarding this law.
Thank you. Question 5, what metrics should the sheriff's office use to track use of force and community policing demographics? And how should the data be shared with the community to ensure full transparency and accountability? Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds.
Well, I just recently received the 2019 Kittitas County Sheriff's Annual Report, and in it, I noticed that there was nothing in there as far as use of force goes. That is something that I would want to do. I believe that we should be sharing use of force incidences, and how I would break that down and what metrics I would use is, I think it would be important to explain use of force incidents on how much time a deputy has on, their sex, their race, their age, and then the suspect's information should also be shared, the suspect's age, race, sex. And then with that, with the suspects, we should also be sharing their mental capacity, whether drug use was used, weapons involved, and the type of call. This information needs to be shared with our people, and it should be separated between deputies and correction officers, and something I would like to share in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, you have 60 seconds to respond.
Thank you. The sheriff's office we have a process in place, we have a policy in place, we have forms in place, and we're in line with the accreditation standards and WASPIC's recommended best policies and practices. Every use of force, whether it's addressing somebody who is injured that's innocent, a bystander, or a suspect, is reported. All of the data is reported up through the chain of command. It's reviewed. There's a number that's drawn. It goes onto a spreadsheet, and it's investigated, every single one. If there's part of that investigation is to address, do we have a problem? Are we complying with policy? Do we have a training issue? Do we have an officer issue? Do we have a legal issue? That information is available to the public, just like all of the rest of the information with respect to public disclosure. So it's all available. And
Thank you.
The end.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we've been collecting questions from our YouTube audience, and I want to remind you that we have time for about 3 questions. Our volunteers may have combined or reworded questions to maintain nonpartisanship or for clarity. If we don't get to your question, remember, you can always reach out to the candidates via email and ask them directly, and I know they would appreciate that. So the first question I have here, Mr. Myers, you are going to start. The question is, how should complaints against officers be investigated? And what information should be shared with the public? And you do have 90 seconds for this response.
Just like the use of force, our current policy requires us to investigate and track every complaint, whether it's internal or external. And so again, those complaints come in, they're assigned a number, they're evaluated, whether this is a minor complaint, is this a policy complaint, is this a criminal allegation, and then they're assigned either to the supervisor, they can be assigned to detective division, they can be assigned to a commander, or they can be assigned to an outside agency. And we've done all of those. Once the investigation is completed, a recommendation comes up. It's reviewed by the individual supervisor, by their commander, and then it comes up to me for a disciplinary decision. All of those are also available. We track them all. We look at them again, the same thing with complaints. Do we have a training issue here? Do we have a perception issue here? Or do we have an officer issue? Do we have a disciplinary issue? It's made available to the public through the public disclosure process. One of the most critical things in transparency is providing truthful, accurate information to the public so that they can form their own decision about what we're doing. I invite anyone down, take a look at our stuff if you have questions. You won't be disappointed.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, I'm going to read the question again, which is, how should complaints against officers be investigated and what information should be shared with the public? And you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you. So all complaints need to be taken seriously. And I think when a complaint is brought in, it should be categorized and it should be either assigned to the direct supervisor of that employee, or it should be assigned to a different supervisor, at which point they should be looking through any reports which are written. They should be looking at videos, and they should be interviewing witnesses. And then depending on where that complaint goes, or the facts that are found, that information could be continued to be followed up upon through further investigations by a different person. Every process of an investigation should go through the chain of command. It should work its way up. There should be multiple eyes on it. And I know with the Washington State Patrol, we had an Office of Professional Accountability and Standards, and it was just very well done. There was a lot of steps involved in investigations, and then there was steps in place to make sure that each part of it was followed up upon properly. And then if there's policy violations, employee training, discipline should be handed down. Customer service is very important in complaints, and I think following up with people who complain is vitally just as important, and that should be done all the way up to the sheriff should be following up with people who make complaints, which I will do.
Thank you. The next question is, how will you address methamphetamine sale and use in the county? And Mr. Olson, you begin. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. So drug use in our county is something that is, it's definitely going on in this county. And through the annual report I just received, I was actually very disappointed to see that there's very little attention done for drug use in this county. I think there was only one delivery arrest last year in Kittitas County. So I already have some processes in place working with other agency heads within this county to try and develop a task force involving all local agencies. I would like to involve other agencies, including maybe some federal partners, DEA as one, where we can meet together and we can target these people that are poisoning our youth and poisoning our county. And with that being said, I think it's important, just as important, to involve the drug courts and trying to get people to, get off of the drugs through, whether it's we are schooling them more, whether they're getting treatment. We need to do that just as equally as much. But I want to be proactive in getting drugs away from our community members and targeting those people that are delivering and transporting drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, the question is, how will you address methamphetamine sale and use in our county? And you have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. I work closely with the other law enforcement executives in the county, and we're all in agreement. We're all on the same page. We don't want to go back to the task force type of approach. We are what's considered more of a retail recreational community. heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, they're all bad, and we have struggles and we have deaths. But sort of that old school mentality of addressing narcotics in our community, we end up putting a lot of the wrong people in jail. And at the end of the day, as long as somebody wants to purchase and use legally or illegally narcotics, they're going to find someone to sell it to them. And so we need to find a way to remove their desire to misuse drugs. We do that through the programs that we've established this year in our jail. We work with our mental health professionals. We work with our medical staff. We work with the grants, the hub and spoke things to address it in the jail. Then we work with the community, all of our community providers, to try to come up with programs and ways to educate people so that we remove that desire. As long as that desire is there, they're going to find someone to buy from. We need to find a way to address the need and the desire to use drugs. That's the future of addressing narcotics in our community.
Thank you. Okay, now we're at question 3 from the audience. Should internal investigations that involve an alleged crime committed by the officer or individual be investigated by that same agency or an outside agency to ensure that there is no conflict of interest? And Mr. Myers, you go next, and you have 90 seconds.
Can I ask for some clarification on that, please?
Yeah, let me try to ask it, to read it again. I'm reading it for the first time, so let me try and see, because we're sourcing this from the community, and it's
Okay.
Should an internal investigation that involves an alleged crime committed by an officer or individual of that agency, I believe, be investigated by the same agency, or should that be investigated by an outside agency to ensure there's no conflict?
Okay.
I think that's what it means. We're going to take that.
Sure. I'm ready. Okay.
Go ahead. You have 90 seconds.
What I was looking for is we talking specific to a criminal allegation. So
yes, the criminal allegation. Yes.
Okay. The department's responsibility generally initially is sort of some fact finding. In other words, verifying, okay, what's the nature of this complaint? Is it in fact policy or is it crime? This one is specific to crime. Generally speaking, that's going to be referred to an outside agency because of the possibility that there's going to be criminal charges. And so if there's any concern about an officer committing a crime, we almost always, I'm just stuttering because I'm trying to think if we've ever not referred those to an outside agency when it comes to a criminal activity. And I think we primarily do. That's our policy. That's our practice. An internal agency, even though that they're capable of conducting those investigations, it just, the appearance, the lens that it's looked through, potential biases, it just doesn't work out. So we've used the Ellensburg Police Department, we've used the Washington State Patrol, we've used Grant County, Yakima County, Chelan County to look into these. They do the criminal investigation, they file it with the prosecutor for review or for criminal charges, and then we, independent of that, conduct an internal investigation to determine if policy was also violated and how we need to address that internally. They're separate.
You're muted.
I put myself on mute because my dog just returned. We're gonna do the question one more time, which is, should internal investigations that involve an alleged crime committed by an officer be investigated by the same agency or an outside agency to ensure there's no conflict of interest? Mr. Olson, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Thank you. I believe any criminal misconduct or allegation done by an employee should be investigated by an outside agency. And the reason for that is it does bring about transparency, brings about that, just a transparent, open investigation. It gives the employee basically a fair chance at an investigation as well. And it's better for all people involved. Anybody conducting an allegation, the employee, the agency. And I think it's very important to reduce the risk to the sheriff's office by having an outside agency do that. While working for the Washington State Patrol, I know the Washington State Patrol was involved in many criminal investigations from other agencies all over the state. And they did a phenomenal job at all those investigations. And, you know, just because it's an allegation of criminal misconduct doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But I think it's important to have that outside agency and outside eyes looking at that. Again, the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office at that point would look at the policy manual violations and then deem what appropriate maybe discipline is needed if the criminal allegation is found to be true, if at all. Thank you.
Thank you. It turns out we're getting lots of questions on YouTube. And so I'm going to ask one more question. And since this is a fairly easy question to answer, it's going to be for 60 seconds. We're going to go, now I'm going to get confused. We're going to go with Mr. Olson next. And the question is this: do you commit to enforcing existing required background checks for handguns and assault rifles as required by current law? And you have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, existing background checks and everything are already done at the statewide level, and I believe through the alcohol, tobacco, firearms. And I believe the Washington State Patrol was creating additional officers in the future to do all the additional background checks that are going to be required due to I-1639. As far as the sheriff's office goes, doing background checks, I think that is something that once a plan is in place, whether the state has taken over that or whether that is going to be the sheriff's office to do their part, I think it is important that we do those background checks and we don't end up with guns in the wrong hands, like is occurring across the country with felons. And I'm definitely against having guns in the wrong people's hands, which may be somebody who's mentally unstable, convicted felons. Those people should not ever have weapons.
Thank you. So, Mr. Myers, I'm going to ask it again. Do you commit to enforcing existing required background checks for handguns and assault rifles as required by current law? And you have 60 seconds.
Well, current law is actually transitioning this over to another agency. I was actually on the committee to make recommendations to the governor on this very thing. Our recommendations were very strong that this needs to be kept at the local level. We have the most, we have the best information. We have the most recent information. We know if somebody's scheduled to go to court, and we don't have the same records management systems throughout the state. And so with this being transitioned over to the State Patrol and Department of Licensing, it's going to create a little bit of a void there because we're still going to have to look at those things. I strongly support a level of background investigation because, again, we don't want convicted felons. We don't want violent felons possessing firearms, especially when they've already established they'll use those. So there is a level of background checks that has to be done. And I believe that it's law enforcement's responsibility to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, it's now time for closing statements, and you have 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. You know, it's really concerning for a lot of people right now with all the stuff that's going on across our country. Movements to defund police, concerns over civil rights violations, concerns over civil rights violations from both the government. It's tough right now, but you know, being in Kittitas County is kind of like being on an island here. We're a pretty safe community. We work well with our public. You know, I'm not worried about defunding the police. We were never given money to do these additional things that we've been asked to do. No matter what the problem is, when you call us, we're going to come. We're going to do what we can to support you. We're going to do what we can to solve the problem. we can't solve every problem. We respond to over 3,000 complaints a year. Not everyone's going to be happy, but we're always going to show up. We're always going to do what we can. It's a pleasure serving.
Thank you. Mr. Olson, you have 60 seconds to do your closing remarks.
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Daily Record. So I want to be your next Kittitas County Sheriff, as I believe there's a need for professionalism, accountability, transparency, in all law enforcement agencies, including our Sheriff's Office. I have 28 years of law enforcement experience, 25 with the Washington State Patrol, who's known for its high level of professionalism and an agency that everyone always goes to as kind of a standard to follow. I feel very honored that many citizens in this county have asked me to run. Every time I run into them in the store, wherever it may be, it's very encouraging to find out how many people want to see a fresh set of eyes and ideas brought to the Sheriff's Office, which is something I will do. I already have plans in place. I want to have a strategic plan where I can look forward to the future 5 years out, and something that I will put in place when I'm Sheriff. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your vote.
I would like to thank Clay Myers and Bart Olson for sharing their views and their willingness to serve as Kittitas County Sheriff. We want to thank our co-sponsor, the Ellensburg Daily Record newspaper, and Ellensburg Community Television, Spectrum Network, and Inland Networks for showing the forum videos throughout the voting season. Finally, thank you to the many League volunteers who make these events possible. To get more information about all of the candidates running in the 2020 general election, the Kittitas County League has created a nonpartisan online voters guide where you will find links to candidate websites and other helpful resources. You can also get information at vote411.org and at the Washington Secretary of State's office. Your vote matters. Join me by casting your ballot in the November 3rd general election. Thank you for joining us.